Hey, what's up, team? It's Breezy here, Zulu 1-1 for C Squadron. Just doing a quick video here, kind of copying what Marty did with the whiteboard series for some of the controllers, but trying to go over this for the maneuver. Real quick, we're going to go over offensive operations today. I'll break it down for the different types of offensive operations and what we mean when we say offensive operations. On the left side of your screen, we'll have the kind of little slide deck put together, and then on the right side, I'll have the sources and/or doctrine references that we can also look at here. All right, next we'll have terminal learning objectives here. So those are the action condition standards for what we're going over here. And then for this video of going into offensive operations, we'll cover the first one being movement to contact. So we got our references there. FM 3-90, which is tactics, ADP 3-90, which is offense and defense, RI 20 boards, and then movement to contact lethality series episode 17 from Danger Ranger. So those are the sources there. Looking at the offense here. Offensive actions are combat operations connected to defeat and destroy forces and seize terrain, resources, and population centers. They impose the will on the enemy. There's 4 characteristics: audacity, concentration, surprise, and tempo. Audacity is the willingness to take bold risks, right? To capitalize on enemies' mistakes. Concentration is massing force and combat power to a decisive point to achieve victory on a particular either battle or objective. Surprise, taking the enemy when they're least expecting it, right? So they're not prepared and in a defensive position as capable, right, to stop our offensive operation. And then tempo, relative speed and rhythm of the military operations over the time in respect to the enemy, right? Tempo can be adjusted either left or right, right? So if we get bogged down on the objective, we might not be losing tempo. We might not be going, particularly slow if we have to deliberately clear a building, right? But that might be slower than us maneuvering, bounding across open terrain, and progressing through the objective, right? So it might be actually slower, but it's relative speed to where we are in the operation. All right, so types of offenses, right? We have a movement to contact, an attack, exploitation, and pursuit. The first thing we're going to cover today is this movement to contact. So the movement to contact, right? It's designed to establish or regain contact to develop a situation. It creates a favorable conditions for subsequent tactical actions, right? Generally, we want to utilize the smallest friendly force feasible. That's recommended by doctrine. And then it leads to 5 real options, right? So we can either attack, and that's 2 types of attack: search and attack and approach march. And then we can defend, bypass, delay, or withdraw. For references on the right side from movement to contact, right, we got FM 3-90. If you scroll through here with the link here, you'll see chapter 4, movement to contact. I can just click this on the PDF I'm in Chrome here, and it breaks down and it comes into movement to contact here. Same thing for ADP 3-90, offense and defense, right? Kind of gets a little bit more here into general terms of the offense and conducting offensive operations. Here is where, I don't know if you notice here, this is where we pulled some of these surprise, some of the characteristics of the offense here. First off, we got movement to contact here, right? So for movement to contact, we have search and attack and approach march. The difference between them is search and attack is setting up a deliberate or hasty attack once the enemy has been found, using as many as your squads as possible, compared to an approach march, which is trying to engage with the smallest element you have first, to offer that commander really flexibility of maneuvering or the ability to bypass the enemy, right? So now we'll jump into game real quick. We'll do the X's and O's with pieces, and we'll go over a search and attack versus an approach march. Currently on the training map here, have a made-up scenario. Our mission for the troop is to destroy Objective Uno, the supply cache located in Building 401, in order to deny the enemy use of these supplies in further operations. Further on with the situation, ISA and our Gulf Intel teams have identified 2 NAIs, NAI 01, 02, with priority information requirements tied to them of enemy disposition of enemy forces within NAI 01 or 02. There's been signal intelligence kind of showing that there has been communications chatter coming in from these locations, and it's generally where the enemy likes to operate. So we might be tasked with the overall, hey, our mission's to destroy the cache, right? But teams might be tasked to conduct a movement to contact, right? The name of this this task that we're going over today, right? So this type of offensive operation, a movement to contact, right? And two ways here. So I got Bravo element here, and we have these phase lines, right? So I got Bravo and Alpha, and they are southwest of phase line Allen, phase line Bill, and phase line Chris. Reason for these maneuver control measures, right? Phase lines are super important. We'll cover this in another video, but these are maneuver control measures to help us control in which the rate in which we are moving through an operation, right? And helping us maintain the appropriate amount of tempo, right? That was one of the 4 characteristics of an offense, right? So if we were to have both Bravo and Alpha hitting the things at the same time, what could happen? You know, potentially Bravo on this objective can have a support by fire and, you know, ignore the terrain, right? But could have something that is firing onto Alpha or vice versa, right? So that's why we kind of set these up. But for the sake of it, both Bravo and Alpha will conduct a movement to contact in their respective NAIs. Bravo will use a search and attack, whereas Alpha here will use an approach march. Let's go ahead and look at Bravo and their search and attack. Okay, so for Bravo here, they're staged along phase line Allen, ready to conduct their movement to contact in NAI 01. They're going to move up with this with their whole element here. So give me 1 second as I'm moving these pieces. Boom, boom, boom. Let's get these all set up. Right, so they're going to move. They're going to identify location of enemy on this objective, right? So they're going to go deliberately into an attack, right? So this lead element is going to establish a support by fire, as we have, as we normally know, right? So lead element support by fire starts maintaining suppression on the enemy, whereas the rear element does a bold flanking maneuver and gets online, either, you know, opposite of either north or south in this case of the enemy, right? So what's beautiful here is we have our nice perfect L. We see that there. We have a nice L assault going on here. Okay. Bravo, as Bravo 2 fire element is maintaining suppression on the objective. Bravo 1 is going to move as close as they can to engage, right? Because we want them to obviously engage the enemy, but we don't want them having to travel so far after making engagement, right? We want to utilize surprise, right? That's one of the characteristics of the offense is surprise. The enemy is looking to the west as they're being engaged. We want to get so close, and to quote someone very famous, to see the white of their eyes before we engage them here with this assault element. Bravo 1 will announce that they're at their assault point, and they'll begin what's called the battlefield handover. Bravo, this assault element, will then pick up a rapid rate of fire and be handing over the suppression from the support by fire over to this assaulting element. At which point, once we have this continued little mad minute in this handover here from the assault element, Bravo 1 will call over a shift fire, in which Bravo 2 will shift its fires away from the direction of the assault, right? So the assault is traveling north to south, right? So they're going to shift their fires away, not towards the direction of the assault. So fires are being suppressed over here, and it also makes sense, right? If these guys were suddenly engaging to the west and then start getting engaged to the north, they're probably going to retrograde to the south-southeast, which is going further into suppressive fire, right? So once shift fire has been called, the assault element can then move through and start maneuvering through the objective, engaging and destroying whatever enemy is here. They'll get to a point where they're halfway. They'll call lift fire, right? Which means that Bravo 2 element is not engaging directly on this micro objective that we have here with this movement to contact. However, if there is, you know, an enemy that pops up here that the assault team doesn't see, these guys can quickly engage, kill this this contact here, and then go back to lift fire, right? So lift fire is not necessarily don't shoot, it's stop shooting on the objective, but target's opportunity are still okay. Bravo 1 will destroy this objective, and destroy the enemy, and move 25 meters past the enemy, where that last guy went down and establish their LOA right along this line. Doctrinally, Bravo 2 will pick up and clear through with their whole element online and establish their limit of advance. If you notice, we just made a perfect L again, right? At this point, we'll conduct our ACE, right? Our ammo, casualty, and equipment. We got to know how much ammo we still have left, how many injuries we may have, or how many guys we have down, and then how much equipment we have left, right? We might have shot all of our freaking laws on this objective for whatever reason. But this is important information, right? Because we still have our follow-on being conducted over here, right? So moving on to Alpha, and they're going to be conducting an approach march, right? So as Alpha, and we're complete on Bravo for NAI 01, we'll say Alpha is then pushed to Bills in this case, and is ready to step from Bills, right? So in this case, Alpha moves up and gets eyes on the enemies within NAI 02, right? So we confirm they're our enemy, right? But let's say there's about 2 dudes there, right? 2 dudes. So Alpha has some options, right? Alpha has options. With the approach march, right? He can engage with the littlest or smallest element he has possible, right? So we have 6-man team, cut that in half, that's 4, right? So you can get Alpha 2 online like we typically do, right? Let's say this guy here is our Mark 48, right? When we say the smallest element possible, it includes equipment, right? So ideally here, we're engaging, if we do engage with suppressed rifles, and that's what we're engaging with in an approach march, right? Smallest element, right? As soon as we start shooting with a crew serve, that lets everybody here in the valley know that there is 7.62 belt fed being shot, which is a sign of a larger force, right? So generally in knowing U.S. forces, right, a weapon squad, which is part of a platoon, has belt fed 7.62. Right. So what that means and what that's scary for us is this enemy that may be on objective Uno, if they do hear any shots, they are now thinking that there is a platoon maneuvering on them and are going to call some heavy reinforcements in, right? Which for us as team size elements in a troop, right? Like we are always punching above our weight class with what we can fight. So in this case, right, Mike 48 might be there if they need it, right? Because it's better to engage with a bigger weapon than have guys go down. But we might just engage and neutralize with our rifles here, and that's able to, neutralize the target, right? And we use the minimal amount of forces need be to do it, right? Another way, which that was the engagement portion, is we can do a bypass, right? So Alpha 1 might see it there. He's like, yep, I got 2 guys there, but calling up to 1-1, hey 1-1, we got 2 by enemy in NAI 02. They have not noticed the engagement in NAI 01, and they do not seem like a threat. Hey, okay, Roger, 2 dudes. That's too easy. Isolation can take care of that. Let's go ahead and bypass. And Alpha 1 can make the decision to bypass NAI 02, meaning can leave these guys here and then can maneuver around and just bypass the enemy on NAI 02. We collected, we answered the information, but we're not going to waste our time with engaging them, right? We can let Rabbit, our air guys, give them 1 by AGM if they become a problem, and we can continue to move on to the objective. So this is how we do a move into contact with our overall objective here, one with the search and attack, and one with the approach march here. Please let me know if you guys have any questions about either one of these. Thanks, guys.